The culture of destructive and idiotic protests to get even more corporate welfare from the rest of Europe has got to stop in France. Either way, it is my contention that French farmers completely and utterly deserve to all go bankrupt. Maybe that will teach them a lesson about markets and work ethics. Who am I kidding? The French have been drinking the statist collectivist Kool-Aid for centuries now. Let's explore. Hello everyone, and welcome to the Freedom Alternative. Now, every time I speak about France, I bring up the country's inherent far-left economic policies and bemoan the fact that the formerly civilized country with which my own country has been sharing cultural ties for over 200 years is now a socialist hellhole. But the fact of the matter is that those policies didn't just appear by magic or through the force of the Soviet tank, as it was the case here. No. The reality is that much of the stupidity that tanks the French economy comes from bottom up. Way too many Frenchmen and women genuinely believe that there is such thing as a free lunch, and way too many French producers of goods and services genuinely believe that not only is it moral for the state to curtail the free choice of their customers, but also that it is desirable, good, and achievable to do so. And, quelle surprise, reality refuses to cooperate. So, as any socialist from anywhere on the planet, they throw temper tantrums whenever that happens. Such is the case with the furious French farmers who hijacked Spanish tankers, stole their merchandise, and threw it down the drain. And the police did nothing, because crimes against property are a social action in People's Soviet Republic of France. Let's read a bit from the article, quote, "Winemakers in southern France have hijacked 5 tankers full of Spanish wine on the border, powering the equivalent of 90,000 bottles of red and white down the drain in protest at unfair competition. Cheers erupted as around 150 furious vintners from Haute-Pyrénées Oriental department unscrewed the cap on 2 tankers at Le Boulou, close to the Mediterranean town of Perpignan, and less than 10 miles from Spain, and emptied their contents onto the motorway on Monday. 3 other Spanish vehicles were allowed to leave with their tanks half empty after having the words vin non conforme, non-compliant wine, daubed on their sides. Local police looked at the social action while French vintners took samples to check for fraudulent wine. I'm sorry, but what is this? If this had happened in Poland or Romania or Hungary, the whole press would have gone full Macintosh bemoaning the country's slippery towards mob rule and fascism. Yet for some reason, when the capital of socialist economic degeneracy does it, the press barely mentions the assaults and the violation of property and calls them social actions. And that's before even mentioning the destruction. Who's going to pay for that, by the way? Will those thugs be forced to work their asses off to cover the loss? And if not, why not? Also, why isn't anyone in jail for the fraudulent seizure of property? Who the fuck gave those fucktards any kind of authority to take samples to, quote, check for fraudulent wine, unquote? Who the fuck do these fucktards think they are? That, my friends, is a behavior that is characteristic to cartels in the third world. Because that's exactly what the French agriculture really is. A third world, mob-ruled, inefficient, degenerate cartel. Nothing more, nothing less. And this cartel is keeping the entire Europe hostage for ransom every time it throws a temper tantrum, which doesn't stop until either Brussels steals several more hundreds of millions of euros from all of us to throw into the French agriculture, or, in this case, Paris demands more money to be given to them from Brussels after Brussels got it from the rest of us. Because let's be clear on this, France is broke. Very broke. And instead of taking steps to get back on her feet, the police panders to the parasitic industries who've ceased to produce anything of relevant value decades ago. Because let's be clear on this too, most of the French wine made after 1995 sucks, and it sucks big time. There's no way it can beat Georgian wine, Spanish wine, or Moldovan wine. And it shows. French wines lag consistently behind in terms of both quality and fair pricing. And the producers know it. And instead of taking steps to solve that, they demand their inefficiency be socialized on the backs of everyone else. Quote, many winemakers in the region feel that French wine does not receive enough protection on the home market and are angry about what they see as a suspicious spike in imports from Spain and Italy, where lower social charges and less red tape enable producers to sell their goods more cheaply. Well, then why the fuck not cut red tape and the social charges? I know that's blasphemy in France, but it's the first step in a very long stream of reforms that are needed if there is to be a French wine sector 20 years from now. Let's read some more. Quote, if a French winemaker produced wine with Spanish rules, he simply wouldn't be able to sell it, said Frédéric Rouanet, the president of the Odd Winemakers Union. Europe's all very well, but with the same rules for all. Well, no, because the rules in agriculture are written by France and for France. Fuck you, no. Anyway, he added, quote, we imported 7.2 million hectoliters of wine in all of 2015. We don't understand how imports rose by 2 million hectoliters in one go and suspect fraud. Plus the Spanish are selling it at 32 euros the hectoliter compared to 78 euros here. We would go under at that price in France. Well, then maybe you should go under and finally go bankrupt. The planet will surely be better off without you clowns. Denis Pigouche, president of the Pyrénées Oriental winemakers, said, quote, these wines have no place in France. What's more, they're not even necessarily European. I suspect they're from South America and then Hispanicized in Barcelona and then Europeanized or Frenchified in France. Now let's suppose that's true. So fucking what? South America is superior to France in wine producing. That's essentially what you're saying. Well, how about you become better again like you used to be, instead of using violence to be protected from the consequences of your own stupidity and recklessness? The protest comes after industry figures showed that France is now the biggest buyer of Spanish wine, purchasing 580 million liters in 2014, a 40% rise on 2013. France has also lost its status as the world's biggest wine producer. Last year, Italy produced 4,900 million liters compared with 4,700 million liters in France. Unions say that French winemakers had been in negotiations for months with the local authorities but had not received sufficient assurances that their grievances were being taken seriously. So we've decided to take matters into our own hands, said Mr. Rodney. He said the tanker hijack was just the beginning unless their demands were met, threatening action in the nearby port of Sète against the import of Italian wines. We will continue until we've proved that the illegal traffic of wine is going on. We are going to protect our consumers. You can trace our wine from the vineyards to the bottle, and those same rules should apply to all. Nique ta mère, you fucking degenerates. Look, the issue is quite simple. The consumers are not and cannot be protected through banning competition. I know that from experience. I'm old enough to remember the times of one or maybe two types of products being available while the rest being banned for unfair competition. These idiots are not farmers. Well, they are, but they are violent thugs first and foremost, and they belong in jail. Look, little New Zealand abolished all agriculture subsidies and protections more than 30 years ago. And now New Zealand routinely outpaces France in agricultural output, even though New Zealand has far less land available for agriculture than France. In fact, 2 counties in southern France may already have more fertile land than New Zealand. I haven't actually run the numbers, but if it's not 2 counties, then surely it's 3 or 4, since the total agricultural land of France is already larger than the entire New Zealand, including its cities. Now, sticking to wine, the New Zealand's Cloudy Bay vineyard set a new standards for the New World's Sauvignon Blanc and was arguably responsible for the huge increase in interest in such wines. The French invented the fucking Sauvignon Blanc, for crying out loud. I'm sorry to say it, but France's wine industry has become bloated, lazy, inefficient, thuggish, and downright harmful. I mean, what's the point in having hundreds of years of tradition if you're not capable of exploiting it? For the Frenchmen watching, and I know there's French fans of this channel, please do consider lobbying for sanity. The world would be poorer if the French wine industry would go, but as things stand right now, the world, and Europe in particular, is far worse off with the current class of farmers and lobbyists who work against the consumer and against the industry itself on the long run. This tide can be turned around provided that insanity ceases to be rewarded. And I can already hear the typing, "Oh, but Lucian, why do you care?" Well, I care because this is just a microcosm of a generalized cancer. Most French industries are like that, namely a third world cartel that throws temper tantrums whenever they feel that daddy state doesn't do enough for their precious little failing businesses. There's a reason most successful cars of Renault are manufactured in Romania and Morocco. There's no way they could make such a fine car like Dacia Duster in France. They'd either have to sell it 5 times more expensive to cover for the mandatory laziness imposed by the insanity of the French unions, or simply make the car crappier due to the onerous pressure of union-imposed regulations. That's not a healthy way to run an economy in the country. You want back the glory of the French product? Well, you'd better start actually competing instead of trying to force others to stop competing. This cuddling bubble supported by the government will not last for much longer. And the more time is wasted, the bigger the guarantee that my prediction of a French collapse will come to fruition. And with that being said, thank you for watching and especially for supporting this channel. I'll see you soon on Freedom Alternative.